And it sits at an altitude of nearly 10,000 feet and goes through 6 consecutive months of complete darkness. Now, the hydroponic exception. The only living plant at the South Pole resides inside the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. Scientists operate the South Pole Growth Chamber, a high-tech hydroponic greenhouse. It grows fresh lettuce, kale, tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers to sustain the isolated research crew. NASA and other agencies use this greenhouse to study how astronauts might grow fresh produce on future missions to Mars or the Moon. Now you come to part two, which is native plant life in outer Antarctica. Now, as you move away from the frozen interior and head towards the coast, especially the Antarctic Peninsula, you encounter a fragile, thriving plant ecosystem. The only two flower plants. Out of the entire continent, only two vascular flowering plant species have adapted to survive. And that's the Antarctic hairgrass, which is the Dyschopsia antarctica, a highly resilient, low-growing grass that can freeze solid and resume photosynthesis immediately when it thaws. Then you have the Antarctic pearlwort, which is called the Colobanthus quetensis, a small yellowish green plant that grows in dense moss-like cushions to shield itself from freezing winds. The cryptogams, mosses, and lichens, the true forests of Antarctica, are microscopic. Scientists have categorized over 100 species of mosses and 200 species of lichens across the ice-free rocky coast. These miniature plants systems grow incredibly slowly, but some moss beds on the eastern coast being with some moss beds on the eastern coast being thousands of years old. Rapid expansion due to climate change. Satellite tracking research spanning 35 years have shown that Antarctica's vegetation is rapidly turning greener. As glaciers melt and summer temperatures warm, the area covered by mosses on the Antarctic Peninsula has increased drastically. And then part three, what lay beneath the South Pole ice sheets. While there is no plant life in the South Pole today, it wasn't always the way. Millions of years ago, Antarctica belonged to a massive supercontinent called Gondwana. During the Cretaceous period, about 83 million years ago, the exact South Pole region was covered in lush green temperatures, rainforests. Polar expeditions have found fossilized logs, ancient tree rings, and fossilized leaves from southern beech trees. Nathophagus, and ginkgos on glaciers just a few thousand miles from the South Pole. It was only as the continent drifted directly under the pole axis and cooled that this massive green expanse froze over completely. And before I stop talking, I want to remind Mark that this is not my show. This is Robert's show. So if you want to talk about global warming, it's up to him, and I don't think he has a bit of a problem with that. So
yeah, no. I just mentioned that just as a side point.
Okay, it's up to
Just
you
as a
and
side
Robert.
point.
You know what I mean?
But your point about Antarctica sort of just goes back to the point I made earlier. You just reiterating what I was
interesting
saying.
this is of course the mainstream, geology and I guess paleobotany for what happened to these plants. They found these plants and they were growing there when Antarctica was part of Gondwana, and that does make a lot of sense, and it fits in with everything else we have, all our other information. However, you guys are probably also aware, and I don't mean for this, and hopefully Robert will allow this, but Graham Hancock, as we all know, has a theory that Antarctica was once Atlantis, and he seems to be saying that these trees are from a more recent period. So this is interesting because this basically refutes Graham, and I hadn't heard this before, that these were Gondwanese. And I'll tell you the truth, it makes more sense to me than what Graham is saying, but it's so I'm very glad this information came up on this meeting. I hadn't heard that before.
On that, does it show that that same tree has it ever grown anywhere else? From because we call it like blow off of seeds from it, or however it produces, like carries on by the winds.
Well, I know ginkgo. I think that's a tropical tree. I don't know a lot about plants, really, I'm afraid, but I know that those trees grow other places where it's warm. So
Yeah.
that implies that, Antarctica was warm at one time.
Yeah, I know ginkgo is around, but I don't know for sure about like the other ones. I can run a quick check if you want me to.
Yeah.
Now,
I
Bob,
think that there has
just on-
been. Carry on.
No, I was just thinking, just on the side note of Mottle's Atlantis connection. I've never heard of Antarctica being that theory, that connection between Antarctica and Atlantis.
Yeah, it was Graham Hancock. I've heard him say it too. He's
Right.
actually brought that up quite a few times, but now he's actually doing research with a bona fide biologist. So his whole story is kind of I take it that he's actually kind of rethinking his whole way of looking at things when it comes to that.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I read a few of his books a long time ago. I haven't kept up with any of his latest stuff in years, but I did read the Atlantis book. And, yeah.
He's actually hanging out with a real biologist who's saying, "Look, man, this is what happened." Like like if you take a look at like the Lake Michigan, for example, okay. Now he's starting to look at it and he's saying maybe something did crash into the earth that created Lake Michigan, and there's also evidence that it could have possibly happened up around Hudson Bay too, which they're doing a lot of good research in. They're really big in the early dry ice research, like the way early dry ice occurred and how we came out of it. Stuff. So it's interesting. If you get a chance to check it out, I'd check it out.
Well,
Yeah.
Hey Bob, what was you saying?
Yeah, you can't interrupt Bob like that. Robert's her biggest fan, Mark. So you're going to have to show a little respect.
There is some evidence that the poles were at one stage very warm, swampy areas, and they have found bones of a very big creature that looks like a crocodile in the Antarctic. But at the moment, what weather people, whatever you call them, meteorologists, believe is that we need those ice caps in order to keep the Earth's rotation stable between the very hot equator and the very cold ice caps. And because we've got the hot equator and the cold ice caps, we've got a medium area in between where we can live and be happy. The fear is that if the ice caps melt too much, the earth will get hotter and hotter, and we won't have areas in which we can grow plants.
You
You know,
We'll
I,
have big deserts.
could I inject quickly too, to also add to what Bob is saying? I've also heard there's the opposite worry too, that we could have a snowball Earth if the ice age gets to, and I think there is a theory that that may have happened, but I think most people don't think it ever has. But yeah, you could also have the opposite, and it would be the same situation, an extreme either way, where we couldn't live. We need that middle way.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about not living at all. We're humans. We are highly adaptable.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of us would live, but if you call it living, I don't know. I'm sure we would survive one way. I hope we would survive one way or another.
Yeah, but how much how much would oxygen be? Because if you talk about land, because that much water being released, how much landmass would be gone, and within that landmass, how much forest would be gone from it?
Well, nobody knows because all of this is guessing.
Yeah.
But remember that we have got a lot of vegetation under the water in the seas. And that water is also producing oxygen. That's one thing to bear in mind. The other thing to bear in mind is that we now live in the age of artificial intelligence and robots. We can change our climate. We can build huge greenhouses. We can put in huge big fans. We can build great big covers. In fact, here's something interesting for you. When I was a little girl, my father worked at the research station in the Metropolis. Is it? Or Salisbury? We might have moved. And he built a huge, great thing called a rain shelter, which was like a great big massive shed on tracks, and he used to push it back up and down across the field to regulate how much rainwater the plants got that he was studying to see. And that was what, 40 or 50 years ago, that people were already experimenting with different ways to grow plants in different climatic zones. So I think that a lot of the scary literature that we've had about climate change was written before the LLMs came along, because now you can put a problem in and they can give you a solution. Oh, well, we'll just put up a shed, we'll just make a glass house, we'll just put in an irrigation system, and we can change climate zones. Yeah, so we no longer need to wait for the Earth to change climate zones. We can make intentional changes, which is very frightening to consider.
I agree that we can change, we can make changes, but that's not related to large language models or any so-called AI. That's down to political needs, political motivations.
Well, probably in the long run, but what the large language model has done is it has democratized knowledge. So people now are no longer as fooled by a government who says, oh no, we don't have money for that, we could never do it. We need all that money to pay our salaries. How could we possibly look after you?
Exactly.
I'm getting rich. Sorry.
Now, I did do a search for the plant life that they mentioned. The ancient South beech trees is the tree rings that was found in the Antarctic.